As we see more mainstream gaming companies like Razer and Corsair target the more enthusiast mechanical keyboard space, many of the brands already well known by keyboard enthusiasts have begun to move into the DIY area. Keychron is no different, and that's what I have for you today. The Keychron Q1 Q1K is Keychron's first foray into the beginner DIY keyboard space, and they are really targeting beginners looking into building their first mechanical keyboard. Or, maybe a better way of describing it, is getting customers into the idea of building their own keyboard, and there's a few different ways Keychron eases people into the idea with the Q1 in two big ways. For starters, the Q1 is very easy to build on, featuring hot-swappable gasket-mounted switches, meaning you realistically just have to pop in or out the switches of your choice, no soldering required. This, however, does come at the trade-off of stability in the switches, but is generally not something you'd notice unless you've used something better before. The second way Keychron eases customers into the idea is by a really aggressive price point. For the bare-bones version of the Q1, meaning you'll have to buy your switches and keycaps separately, Keychron asks for $149 USD. For a fully assembled version, meaning it comes with a pre-selection of one of 3 switches, as well as keycaps to match your frame color of choice, the price only goes up by $20 to $169. Nice. The price point here is so critical and aggressive that I would recommend the fully assembled version just from a value per dollar perspective, even if you plan on ripping everything out and replacing the keycaps and switches with something of your own choice. The pricing is also critical in terms of competitiveness. It hits around the same price you would find more mainstream companies charging for their highest-end gamer keyboards, and it's also significantly competitive with what I've mentioned in previous videos to be Keychron's most direct competing product, Glorious's GMMK Pro. For reference, the GMMK Pro only comes in a bare-bones version, at a rock-solid price of now $169.99, having undergone a price cut from $199.99 originally, like I paid for it. Even with this new price point in mind, considering a full build-out of the GMMK Pro might be around $250 to $300 or even higher, it's hard to deny the Q1's value when you can get a fully assembled, ready-to-go keyboard out of the box for $169, and both boards are a 75% form factor. Speaking more to the price point, it also significantly undercuts already established DIY mechanical keyboard kits, which start at around $350. However, it should be noted you trade some customizability getting the Q1 than you do getting one of these kits. So we've established just how competitive the Q1 really is. With me here today, I have my Q1, which you might have seen in previous videos. Just to recap, this is the Space Gray version. I got it with Gateron Phantom Brown switches, and the keycaps have been replaced from the out-of-the-box ones with Enjoy PBT Sushi keycaps. The frame can come in 2 other colors besides the gray, as there's also a black or dark blue available. Furthermore, you also have the option from Keychron for the Q1 to come with Gateron Phantom Blues or Phantom Reds, not just the Phantom Browns like I have here, and the keycaps from Keychron do their best to match the frame color. The factory keycaps aren't incredible, but they're definitely better than what you might find on a Corsair or Razer keyboard by default, which is to be expected. Finally, a quick note on what you get in the box. Obviously the keyboard itself, but you also get a coiled USB-C cable, which is a super nice touch to have included, as well as a keycap puller, switch puller, a hex key, and screwdriver. Everything needed to begin working on the Q1 to your heart's content, and overall, a super complete package out of the box, as well as some spare parts for any future repairs that might be necessary. So let's get into the important part, how the keyboard actually performs. The typing experience is, in a word, great. But the build quality feels pretty solid, but I think this is where the first compromise comes in. While it by no means feels cheap, the frame of the Q1 is markedly less solid than, say, the GMMK Pro. Both are made of aluminium, but not all aluminium is created equal. And because I'm not a metallurgist, I suppose the best way of describing it is that Keychron doesn't use as premium of metal as Glorious must be. However, as I said, the Q1 doesn't feel cheap. Where the lower quality metal or machining really shows is actually in the acoustic performance. On a solid surface, there is a sort of ringing echo sound. This was primarily alleviated by placing it on a padded surface like this whole desk mat. And now, through headphones, I don't hear it in a day-to-day use. However, if it's really bothersome, a popular mod for the Q1 going around is putting an additional layer of foam inside. The factory stabilizers are Gateron's own stabilizers, and they perform well, but feel just okay. It should be noted that the Q1 supports third-party stabilizers, like Durot's. Overall, I was super happy with the typing performance out of the box, but of course, your mileage may vary depending on the switches you choose, etc. Getting into the actual user experience, this is where I think the most compromises were made. The Q1 is powered by open source firmware and mapped through the open source VIA software. It is functionally quite fine, but not nearly as user-friendly or intuitive as the suites from, say, Corsair or Razer. However, I think by going this route, it saves a lot of development costs from being passed onto the keyboard, lowering the overall price. The ease of use is also impacted by the spotty documentation provided by Keychron. It attempts to be comprehensive, but isn't always clear or obvious. For example, when trying to remap keys, I kept changing the keys on layer 0 in the VIA software, but it wouldn't take. I contacted Keychron support, and they said for Windows, layers 2 and 3 are for Windows, while layers 0 and 1 are for Mac. And this is where I get to talk about the PCB switch. On the Q1, there's a switch for Mac OS or Windows, obviously compatible with both. I thought by having the switch onto the Windows setting, it would mean all 4 layers would be used on Windows. However, that's not the case. What the switch actually does is tell the keyboard which layer to load upon turning on. And on Windows, it starts at layer 2, and you can switch between layers 2 and 3 for control on Windows, and to change keybinds on Windows, edit the keys for layers 2 and 3, and layers 0 and 1 are useless unless you're on Mac OS. The documentation doesn't really make this immediately obvious, and is self-admittedly a, quote, common problem users of the Q1 are experiencing, as per Keychron's customer support. Finally, let's talk about RGB. I should lead off by mentioning that the RGB is going to be tinted in different ways if you go with the Gateron Phantom switches due to the colored housing of the switch. On my Phantom Browns, the RGB is darkened, and as Keychron puts it, has a coffee tint to the colors. Maybe I'm just weird, but I actually think on a spectrum cycling of RGB colors, unicorn vomit if you will, the coffee tint looks kinda cool. I don't know. However, RGB is perhaps my biggest pain point of this keyboard. Customizing it is initially unclear. You have some hardware controls for the keyboard, however you need a JSON file by Keychron that you can load into VIA in order to control the RGB through the software, and this would be the method I recommend for this. It's not incredibly intuitive, and you know, that's kind of the story I've been getting at with this keyboard. The Q1 is an absolutely fantastic keyboard when it comes to the stuff that matters, like typing experience, angle, design, quality, etc. Especially considering its price point, it's a fantastic experience, and very easy to recommend. However, it comes at the cost of a little bit of a learning curve, and it's not immediately obvious controls or features. The keyboard isn't necessarily user-intuitive, and that's the trade-off to consider. So, in my conclusion, in my opinion, the Keychron Q1 is an easy recommendation. As long as you're aware going in, customizing it through software isn't going to be as easy as other gaming keyboards you might have had. Thank you all so much for watching. If you liked what you watched, make sure you leave a like and are subscribed, hitting that notification bell so you know when we put new videos out. We try to upload twice a week. Leaving a comment with your thoughts also helps us out a lot. If you'd like to see a more direct comparison of the Keychron Q1 and the glorious GMMK Pro, check out this video, where I talk about the QC issues with the GMMK Pro. Finally, follow us on Twitter at tech_4_thought and Instagram at tech_for_thought. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. And overall, a super complete